So first, you should put the multimeter to the DC voltage to 20 volts and then press power button. So as you can see here, for example, in this motherboard, this is the BIOS chip, as you can see, with 8 pins. Okay, usually the BIOS is near to the super I/O, as you can see. You will find usually the BIOS near to the super I/O or near to the ICH. So let's plug the power adapter and then check the pin number 8 of the BIOS. As you see in the schematic, always you will find 3.3 volt in the pin number 8 of the BIOS without powering on the laptop. We have this dot here, means this is pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So let's check pin number 8. So as you can see in the multimeter, we have 3.3 volt. So if you find that 3.3 volt in pin number 8 of the BIOS, but the laptop still does not working, means you should reprogram the BIOS. Because about 90% the file or the firmware inside the BIOS is corrupted. So as you can see in the schematic, we have in the pin number 3 volt also. As you can see in the schematic, in the pin number 3 write protect, we have 3 volts. So let's check pin number 3. So 1, 2, 3, we should find 3 volt, as you can see. So pin number 4, we will find 0 volt because the pin number 4 is connected to the ground. So let's check the clock. So the clock exists in pin number 6. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is pin number 6. So let's check. Here we have 1.5 volt. Okay. So the clock is okay. So the power of the BIOS seems okay. So if you have a failed motherboard and you check the 3.3 volt in the pin number 8 of the BIOS and you find it good, you check the clock, you find it good, means you have problem with the firmware inside the BIOS. You should flash or program the BIOS and you will solve the problem. I'll show you the place of the BIOS in the motherboard. So as you can see here, this is the laptop motherboard. Okay, here in the motherboard we have always the CPU. This is the GMCH. Here we have the ICH or the circuit bridge. Okay, so always in the motherboard, in the laptop motherboard, you should look for the super I/O, the SIO. So let's check here. We don't have the super I/O. So let's check the other side. As you can see, here we have the SIO. This is the super I/O, as you can see. So usually the BIOS chip is near to the SIO, to the super input output IC. Okay, so let's check here. We don't have the BIOS, so the BIOS should be in the other side of this IC. So let's check. So as you can see, this is the BIOS, as you can see here. Okay, let's check its reference. As you can see here, this is the BIOS reference. We have 25Q16BVS-AG. 16, as you can see here, 16 means the capacity or the size of this BIOS is 60 megabit, means 2 megabytes. Okay, because 8 bit equal 1 byte. Okay, so always or usually you will find the BIOS near to the SIO, super input IO, or in the other side of this IC. Sometimes you can find the BIOS near to the ICH or to the circuit bridge. And sometimes we'll find that the ICH, the BIOS and the super IO is near to each other. So let's check another motherboard. I will show you the BIOS in many motherboards in order to go deeper into understanding the working principle of the BIOS. Here, as you can see, we have another motherboard. So this is the processor, as you can see here. So the processor with the GMCH and also the graphic card. Here we have just in this motherboard two chip, the big chip, this and this. So this is the ICH or the surge bridge that is responsible for all the connectors and ports in the motherboard. Okay, here this part is the CPU, and here we have the GMCH and the graphic card. So the graphic card and the GMCH is integrated with the CPU, okay, because this is a new motherboard. So let's check. Here we have the ICH, as you can see, and here we have the Super IO, as you can see. So I told you before that the BIOS should be always or usually near to the Super IO or to the ICH. So as you can see, this is the BIOS. You should distinguish between the BIOS and the MOSFET. Always the BIOS has a big chip than the MOSFET. Okay, so here we have the MOSFET, as you can see, and here we have the BIOS. The BIOS is bigger than the MOSFET. And sometimes in some motherboards, you will find the BIOS with a mark, a color here, or a band. Okay, so let's check the reference of this BIOS. As you can see here, we have 25Q32, as you can see. So 25Q32, as you can see, BVSONG. So 32 means what? 32 megabit means 4 megabyte. Okay, 4 megabyte. Always you will find that the reference or the letter that is designed for the BIOS is U, exactly like an IC, because the BIOS is an IC. Okay, so let's check another motherboard. So we will check also this motherboard. So as you can see here we have the processor, as you can see. Here we have the GMCH with the graphic card. So the graphic card integrated with the GMCH. Here we have the ICH or the surge bridge, and here we have the SIO or the Super IO. Okay, so the Super IO is the IC that is responsible for the power in the whole motherboard. Okay, so let's look for the BIOS. So as you can see, here we have the ICH, here we have the Super IO, and here we have the BIOS, as you can see. So this is a MOSFET or a simple IC, and this is the BIOS. Always the BIOS is greater or is bigger than MOSFETs and other ICs with 8 pins. Okay, so as you can see here, we have a color here. Okay, as you can see, this color means the BIOS. Okay, so here we have the 3 components are next to each other. So let's check another motherboard. So as you can see here, also in this motherboard, we have the processor here, we have the GMCH, as you can see here. So let's see the other side. So in the other side, as you can see, we have the ICH or the surge bridge, and here we have the Super IO, as you can see. So let's look for the BIOS. The BIOS should be next to the surge bridge or next to the SIO. So let's check. So as you can see, here we have the Super input output, here we have the BIOS. Do you see the difference between BIOS and ICs or MOSFETs? Do you see the difference? Always the BIOS is bigger. So this is the BIOS. This BIOS, as you can see, it seems that this BIOS is already removed from the motherboard and reprogrammed. As you can see here, this is a new soldering. Here we have a flux. So this BIOS is already reprogrammed. Okay, so this is the BIOS with 8 pins, as you can see, 8 pins. Always the pin number 1, as you can see, you will find the pin number 1 always is marked with a hole here, or as you can see, this mark means this is the pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Always the pin number 4 of the BIOS is connected to the ground, and the pin number 8 is connected to the VCC. That's equal to 3.3 volts. We will see all this in the schematics, and we will check the BIOS using the multimeter. Okay, so we will go step by step until you be a pro in the BIOS and how to reprogram it and its schematic, etc. Okay, so in this motherboard, as you can see, we have an old BIOS, as you can see. In the new motherboards, okay, we find just BIOSes with 8 pins. Okay, so also you can reprogram this BIOS using a program. I will show you all this in the next lectures. How to find the firmware of any BIOS you want. Okay, so of course, if you want to flash a failed BIOS, you will need a firmware or a bin file. So how can you find it and where you find it? I will show you how. So I will show you how you can find the software just in Google, in the internet, and I will show you also if you have an executive file of the software, how to convert it to the bin extension using the CMD command or DOS command. So I show you how. So here, as you can see, you can just go to Google. So for example, let's assume, for example, that we have, okay, this kind, for example, of the laptop. For example, deal, okay, latitude, okay, 5410, for example. For example, let's assume that we have this kind of laptop that contain a failed BIOS. We should reprogram its BIOS. So let's just type in Google the model of the laptop and bin file, for example. Okay, bin file, and press enter. So as you can see here, you will find many results. As you can see, for example, for this result, deal A5410 BIOS bin free download, for example. So you can check these results in Google, and of course you will find the bin file. Of course you will find a free firmware, and sometimes if the firmware is not exist, okay, you should buy it. Sometimes for some laptops, some new laptops, okay, with a very good performance, you cannot find its firmware. You should buy it in the internet. Okay, but the majority of firmwares you can just download it for free. Okay, so now I will show you the trick that I prefer to get the bin file or the firmware. So I can just type here deal, for example, let's type, for example, deal latitude, okay, 5410 drivers, okay, and press enter, as you can see. So let's select the first result. Here we have the deal website. So let's get in the official website of Dell Latitude. Okay, so we can just, here as you see, we have driver downloads. Here we have check for updates. So for us, we will select, as you can see here, find drivers. So let's click find drivers. So here we go. We have manually find a specific driver for your latitude 5410. This is just an example. So here you can type here a keyword. For us, no problem. Here you should select your operating system. For example, let's assume that we have, for example, Windows 10 64, the same Windows that I have. So here the category, so we look for the BIOS. Okay, let's select the BIOS. here, of course, you can select the type of the file you want. Okay, here we have the zip file, here we have application, CPG BIOS executable, okay, for Windows and DOS. So here we have the firmware image. So let's select firmware image. This is good firmware, but no results. So for some laptops you will find the firmware images. If you find the firmware images, it's good. You can program or flash the BIOS directly using these firmware images. But if you don't find it, you can just select all, as you can see, and here we have a BIOS. As you can see, we can just download it, but this type of this BIOS is executive BIOS. So let's see the type of this BIOS. We can just expand it from here. So as you can see, it's version here, the file name, as you can see, EXE means executive BIOS. But for us, we need the bin file. But I will show you how to convert this kind of file, executive file, to binary file. So let's download this file. Let's click download. So here, as you can see, the download is started. So as you can see, this is the file that I download from the Dell website. So let's extend here, as you can see. So this is application. So let's check the proprietary. As you see, here we have EXE, means executive file. But for us, we don't want the executive file. We need binary file. So let's create a new folder. Okay, and for example, name it exe to bin file. Okay, so, and let's move this file to this folder. As you can see, now here I have the file here in this folder. Okay, now let's click Windows plus R later in the keyboard. As you can see here, we have the run window. Let's type CMD and press enter. As you can see, so now we have the Windows, the CMD Windows. So here, let's write CD and then space. Let's go and copy the path where we have the file, the executive file. So this is the path. So copy, okay, and then go to DOS window and paste, and then press enter. Okay, and then let's type rename star point star space star point BEN means binary. Okay, and then press enter. Okay, then let's type exit and press enter. Here we go. We have the bin file, as you can see. Okay, this is the same path, as you can see, and we have the file is converted to bin file. As you can see, we have bin file. So let's extend here, as you can see, point bin. Okay, so let's check the properties, as you can see. So here, as you can see, we have bin. So using this command, we convert the executive file to the bin file. Okay, so we can, if you want, open this bin file using the edit with Notepad++. Let's see, let's check. As you can see, it's locked like this. Of course, this is unreadable, you cannot read it, but the programmer can do. Okay, so if we launch the software, as you can see, this is the software, we can open, go to File, Tab, and then Open. So we can go and open that file, the bin file. So here, as you can see, we have, this is the folder, exe to bin. So let's check. So we have the bin file. Let's select this bin file and press open, and then okay, as you see. So right now we open the bin file, as you see. Now this is the bin file, as you can see. Okay, all this and the firmware. Now we can program the BIOS, a specific BIOS using this firmware. You can just go to program, and of course, as you see here, we have use adapter. It asks us to use the adapter, this kind of adapter, and we can just click program. But here, as you see, the device unavailable or error, because I didn't connect the programmer, because I have a failed programmer. I still wait for the programmer. Okay, so but this is easy. This is the way that you can use to reprogram or flash the BIOS. So to summarize, to find the bin file, you can just go to Google and type the model of your laptop or your computer or even your television or any device you want. For example, the model, then bin file. If you find the bin file, it's good. If you don't find it, you can just write the model of your laptop and then drivers. And you can go to the official website of your laptop and download the executive file. Okay, and you can convert the executive file to the bin file using the commands that I teach you. Okay, of course I will add a file, a Word file that contain this command. Okay, that you can use to convert exe file to bin file. Okay, about the BIOS sizes. So let's check this BIOS, for example. As you can see, we have 25Q32. Okay, 32 BVS 32. Okay, so in this BIOS we have 32, as you can see. 32 means 4 megabytes. The size of this BIOS is 4 megabytes. I will show you how I calculate this 4 megabytes. Okay, so 8 megabit equal 1 megabyte. Okay, why? Because 8 bit equal 1 byte. So 16 bit will equal 2 byte, 32 bit will equal to 4 byte, and 64 bit will equal to 8 byte. That's why when you find here, as you can see, between Q and F, 8 means the IC size is 1 megabyte. 16 means 2 megabyte. 32 means 4 megabyte. And 64 means 8 megabyte. Always you should divide it by 8, as you can see. Because 8 bit equal 1 byte, so 8 megabyte divided, you should divide 8 by 8, we will get 1. 16 divided by 8, we will get 2. 32 divided by 8, we will get 4, and also here we will get 8. Okay, so let's check some BIOSes IC. So here, as you can see in this motherboard, this is the BIOS IC. So let's check its size. So let's check its size, as you can see here. So we have 25Q16, as you can see. So 25Q16 BVS. So here you can find here BVS or if WS, no problem. But always you should focus in the 2 numbers after Q. Okay, so as you can see here in the BIOS, we have, as you can see, 25Q16. Okay, so 16 means 2 megabyte, as you can see. So 16 means 2 megabyte, because 16 means 2 megabyte. So this BIOS, if you want to reprogram this BIOS, you should reprogram it or flash it with a program flash that is equal to 2 megabyte or less than 2 megabyte. You cannot reprogram it with a flash more than 2 megabyte. You know why? Because the IC has as a maximum size 16 megabit, means 2 megabytes. Okay, so let's check another motherboard. So for example, for this motherboard, as you can see, we have here the BIOS. So let's check its reference and then its size. So as you can see here, we have 25Q32. Okay, Q32. So 32 here means 4 megabytes. Okay, 32 means 4 megabytes. And as you see in the BIOS, we have 25Q32 BVS. Okay, we can find here FWS or BVS. No problem. Always you should check or focus in the number after Q. Okay, so let's check again. So we have 25Q32. 32 megabit means 32 divided by 8 equal 4 megabits. Okay, so this is the working principle of the BIOS sizes. So for this, as you can see here, 1 means 1 megabit equal 128 kilobyte. 2, if you find 2 here, means 256 kilobyte. If you find 4, means 512 kilobyte. Okay, here also if you find 128 means 60 megabyte. Why? Because if you divide 128 by 8, you will find 16. Okay, why? Because 8 bit equal 1 byte. Okay, so 256 megabit equal 32 megabyte. But the most used BIOSes is the BIOSes IC with 8, 16, 32 and 64 megabit. Okay, so this is the main important tips that you should know about BIOS sizes, because if you want to reprogram the BIOS, you should first know about its size. Why? Because when you know about its size, you can compare between the BIOS size and the size of file, the flash file that you will use to program the BIOS. For example, if you have a BIOS with 2 megabytes, okay, for example, let's assume that here we have 16. Okay, so we have 25Q, okay, 16 BVS. This is just a reference EG. Okay, so we have 16. 16 means 2 megabytes. So this BIOS has 2 megabytes, okay, of size. So the file, okay, the file that we will usually find with bin extension. Bin means binary, okay, binary. Okay, so this file should be less than or equal 2 megabytes. This file that we want to use to flash this IC with this reference should be less than or equal to megabyte. Why? Because the maximum size of the BIOS IC, of this BIOS IC, is 2 megabytes. Okay, the same for example 32. Here the file should be less than or equal 4 megabytes, and so on. Okay, to see the BIOS faults. So the first fault is the computer won't start. So even if you press the power button, but the computer won't start. This failure is one among the BIOS failure. Of course, after checking the power for the computer, for example, if you have a laptop, you should check the adapter. If you find that the adapter is good, so the BIOS can be the first cause of this failure. The second failure is the black screen. When the laptop is on, but the screen still black, no data in the screen, means the probable cause of the failure is the basic input-output system, the BIOS. You should reprogram it. So of course, for the black screen, there is many reasons. For example, problem in the RAMs, in the random access memory. The problem can be also in the graphic card. But if you check the random access memory and all things in the computer seems to be good, then the problem is in the BIOS. You should flash the BIOS using a new program. The third fault is the BIOS errors. When you get a lot of errors while you start your computer, means you have a failed BIOS. The fourth fault of the BIOS is the computer won't start and the power lead or the caps locks lead blank. When you have the power lead blank or the caps lock lead blank, means you have probably a failed BIOS. Okay? The next fault is the dead motherboard. If you have a dead motherboard, when you press the power switch or the power button, but you didn't get any response, no light, no indication in the computer, means the probable cause of failure is the BIOS. You should reprogram your BIOS. Of course, you should first check your adapter. If you have a laptop, you should always check your adapter, especially if you don't install the battery. Okay? When you have a good adapter or a good battery and the computer won't start up, means the problem is in the BIOS. You should reprogram it. Of course, I will show you in the next lectures how to program the BIOS step by step. Okay? The next failure of the BIOS is no data in the computer screen. This failure is the same failure as the black screen, but sometimes you can get a black screen or a white screen, okay, or even a blue screen, etc. When you get this kind of screens with no data in it, the BIOS probably is the cause of this failure. So you should reprogram the BIOS. And of course, in the next lectures, I will show you how to reprogram the BIOS and how to back up the software in the BIOS first. Because always you should make a backup of your BIOS before reprogramming it. Because you can need this backup again. Okay? So the next failure of the BIOS is beeps. When you hear a lot of beeps, maybe 2, 3, 4, or even 5, when you start the computer, maybe the problem can be in the BIOS. But first, you should check the RAM, the random access memory slot. So if you find that the random access memory slot is installed correctly, okay, and you should check also the hard disk drive and also the CMOS battery, all connectors in the motherboard. And you should check that the power is good in the whole motherboard. And if you check all this component, the RAM, the HDD, hard disk drive, the CMOS battery, all connectors, the power is good in the motherboard, and the failure still persists, I mean always the beeps still persist when you start up your computer, means you have the problem in your BIOS. You should flash your BIOS. The next failure is when you check all voltages in the motherboard, you find that all voltages are present. You find the 19 volt, you find the 3 volt and 5 volt. Computer is on, all voltages are present. The 5 volt for the USB connector, the 3 volt are present in the pin number 8 of the BIOS. You find all voltages, but the computer still not on the screen, still black screen or white screen. This is a good sign that you have the problem in the BIOS. You should remove your BIOS and flash it or reprogram it using the program, and then the computer will work fine. So this is the most important and the most BIOS failure that you will get during repairing. If you get one of this failure that we discussed, you should reprogram the BIOS. But the first thing to do is to back up the BIOS. So how to download any BIOS circuit diagram. So as you can see, let's for example say that we want to download the circuit diagram or the manual for this BIOS chip. As you can see, we have here 25Q16 BVS IG. Okay, so 16 means 2 megabytes. So we can just go to Google, as you can see, and then type 25Q16 BVS IG. Okay, and then press enter. So as you can see here, the first result we have 25Q16 BVS IG memory datasheet. So let's click here. As you can see, so here as you can see, we have the datasheet of this BIOS reference, as you can see here. So this is a 16 megabytes or a 16 megabit serial flash memory, as you can see here. Okay, so here we can download the datasheet here, as you can see. I can just press this link, as you can see, and the download will start. So as you can see, this is the manual for this BIOS. As you can see, we have two types of BIOS. We have 8-pin BIOS and 16-pin BIOS, as you can see. Okay, this is 16 megabit serial flash memory. 16 megabit means 2 megabytes, okay? Because 8-bit equal 1 byte, okay? So we can just click here and you can download the manual. As you see, now the manual is in downloading, okay? I can also go here, for example, let's check this result also. As you can see, also the same working principle, the datasheet for the 25Q16 BVS IG wind bound flash memory. As you can see, this is it, okay? And here, as you can see, we have the download, the file. You can download it also here. So I will show you another website that I use frequently. This is it, all datasheet. Here also you can download any datasheet you want of any IC you want. Okay, so here you can just type here the reference of the IC and then search. So as you can see, this is 25Q16 BVS IG. Let's click here. Okay, so we have the file is ready, the same file, as you can see. So we can just click here, download, as you can see, and then we have the datasheet. Okay, so this is the way that you can use to download any IC datasheet. Okay, you can even write here the reference. For example, let's write another reference, for example 25Q64. For example, we look for a BIOS chip with 64 megabit. 64 megabit means 8 megabyte. Okay, so let's just click search. So as you can see here, we get a lot of references. Okay, as you see, we have here a lot of references. For example, this, you can just click here and download it. 1 megabit means not the size of the BIOS. No, this is the size of the file. As you see, 68 megabit serial flash memory with DL and quad SPI. So 64 megabit means 8 megabyte, as we have seen in the previous lectures. Here we have 3 volts. Of course, all chip ICs or the BIOS chip has as the power as VCC 3 volt. Okay, so you can choose any one of here, any one you want here, and then click the file. As you can see, then click here. Okay, as you can see, we get the file. As you can see, the file now is ready. You can just read the file here, as you can see, or click download to your computer, as you can see. Okay, the BIOS chip pin configuration. We're going also to see how to download the circuit diagram of every BIOS chip you want. We're going also to see the schematic of the BIOS chip, and of course we will see some real BIOS chip in the motherboard, and we will use the multimeter to check its pins, to check the VCC pin, and of course to check the ground pin, etc. So let's get started. So as you can see here, this is 8-pin BIOS chip, as you can see. But first, I will show you how to download any BIOS chip you want. So let's assume that, for example, we have a BIOS chip with this reference 25Q16BVS IG. Okay, so here we have 16, so this is the size of the BIOS chip. So 16 in megabit. So 16 in megabit equal to 2 megabyte, as we have seen in the previous lecture, where we discussed about the BIOS chip sizes. So let's go to Google and type this reference 25Q16BVS IG, and then press enter. So as you can see here, we have the first result. We have here 25Q16BVS IG. So let's get to this first result. So here we have the same reference, as you can see here. So this is 16 megabit serial flash memory, as you can see. So 16 megabit means 2 megabytes. Okay, so let's go here and download the data sheet. So let's just click here, download. So here we go. Here we have the file, as you can see. So we have 25Q16BV, as you can see also here. We have the 25Q16BVS or BVF. This is interchangeable. FIG or BVSIG, no problem, because this is the interchangeable. Okay, all these are interchangeable. This BIOS reference BVSIG is the interchangeable with this. Okay, so now let's see the pin configuration. As you can see here, this is the table of content where we have all about this BIOS. We have here the pin configuration. As you can see, you can read about every pin, its working principle. Okay, so let's go directly to the pin configuration. Okay, so here, as you can see, we have the features. As you can see here, this is 25Q16BV. As you see, 16 megabit or 2 megabyte, as I told to you. Okay, so because 8-bit equal 1 byte, so this is a 16 megabyte or 2 megabyte. So here we have many features. As you can see, you can read all these features. And here, as you can see, we have the pin configuration of this BIOS. Okay, so this is the pin number 1. Always we have this mark here in the pin number 1. Okay, this is the pin number 2. As you can see, this is input output. Data, as you see, DO means data output. Okay, here we have the WP, the write protect. Okay, here we have the ground. Always the BIOS chip in the pin number 4 is connected to the ground. We will see this in the motherboard, okay, in a real motherboard. So here we have pin 5, we have DI. This means data in, okay, so data out and data in here. Here we have the clock, okay, this is for synchronization. This is the clock. Every IC should receive a clock signal, okay, for the synchronization. Okay, so this is the clock. Here we have the hold for input output, and here this is the VCC. Always the 8-pin BIOS is powered in the pin number 8. So in the motherboard, when you want to check whether the BIOS is received the power or not, you should check the pin number 8, and you have to find 3.3 volt. Okay. When you plug the adapter in the power jack of the laptop motherboard, you should go directly to the BIOS and you should find 3.3 volts in the pin number 8 without powering on the laptop, okay? So this is the pin configuration. So here, as you can see in this table, this is the pin description, as you can see. Okay, so always the pin number 1 is, as you can see, this is chip select. Pin number 2, as you can see, this is data output. So always in the pin number 1, we have the chip select, as you can see. The CS means chip select input. This is the data output, as you can see. This is the write protect input. Always in pin number 4, we have ground. Data input, as you can see in pin number 5. We have clock in pin number 6, serial clock, as you can see, hold in pin number 7, and the power supply, as you can see here in the pin number 8, VCC. Okay? So now I will show you the schematic of the BIOS in a real laptop schematic. So this is a laptop schematic, no matter the type of the laptop, because I teach to you the working principle. If you complete this course, you will learn the working principle of how you can flash the BIOS, what is the BIOS, the pin configuration of the BIOS, the schematic of the BIOS, etc. So the working principle is the same. If you get and understand this course, you will understand any schematic and any pin configuration of any BIOS chip, okay? So for example, here we have the table of content for this schematic. As you can see here, let's check for the BIOS. Here we have the ICH, as you can see here we have the DC battery changer, select battery connector, the system power 3 volt, 5 volt. Here we have the processor, the GMCH, the DDR, this is the RAM. So here we have LCD connector, this is the ICH or the circuit bridge. We have the SPI. SPI means the BIOS chip, okay? So here we have the Super IO, as you can see. So always the BIOS is near of the Super IO and also near of the ICH. So the BIOS is in page 38. So let's go to page 38. Here we go. So let's zoom in a little bit. So as you can see here, so this is the BIOS, as you can see, the same pin configuration, okay? We have here, so the output signal, this is the write protect, this is the VSS, always connected to the ground. Here, of course, this is another type of BIOS in this schematic. This is not a wind bond, this is SST 25L F080A. So this is another type of BIOS, but as I told you, the working principle is the same. This course will teach you how you can deal with the BIOS, how you can program and reprogram any BIOS you want, okay? So as you can see, the pin number 4, as I told to you, is always connected to the ground. So here, as you see, we have pin 5, okay? We have here the clock, the hold, and the VDD. As you can see, we have 3 volts. Always in pin number 8 you should find 3 volts, okay? So as you can see in this laptop motherboard, this is the BIOS, as you can see. Here we have this dot, means this is the pin number 1, okay? Pin number 2, 3, pin number 4. Always the pin number 4 is connected to the ground. We will check it. Pin number 5, 6, 7, and 8. 8 always is connected to the VCC. So to check the BIOS, let's use the multimeter. Let's first put the multimeter selector to the buzzer option, as you can see here, and or to the continuity option, and then press the power button. Okay. So as I told to you, always the pin number 1. We have pin number 1, 2, 3. Always the pin number 4 is connected to the ground. So let's check pin number 4, as you can see here. Let's check first the continuity. The continuity is seated correctly. So I will put the red probe in the pin number 4 and then the other probe in the ground, as you can see. So as you can see in the multimeter, low resistors means the pin number 4 is connected to the ground. The pin number 8 should not be connected to the ground because the pin number 8 is connected to the power rail, as you can see. It's not connected to the ground. Okay. So we have here another BIOS, as you can see. Here we have this whole head, means this is the pin number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's check the pin number 4. Always the pin number 4 should be connected to the ground, as you can see. And here we have the pin number 8, where we should check whether we have 3 volt or not when you plug the power jack here in the power jack, or when you plug the adapter in the power jack. Okay. So what you should remember is that the power or the BIOS chip is always near to the ICH or to the Super I/O. As you can see here, we have the Super I/O. Directly under the Super I/O, as you can see, we have the BIOS, as you can see here. Okay. So, and the BIOS, the 8-pin BIOS that is used frequently in the motherboards, composed of 8 pins. Always the pin number 4 is connected to the ground and the pin number 8 is connected to the VCC. Okay. To see how to reprogram or flash the BIOS chip step by step. So I will explain to you how to program the BIOS, a failed BIOS, in the computer, because I didn't receive yet my new programmer. Okay. So now I will explain to you and I will teach you how to flash the BIOS step by step in the computer. Just follow me and you will understand everything. Okay. And the working principle is the same. By understanding this course, you can flash any BIOS using any programmer. Okay. Because the working principle is the same. Always we have the programmer, the software, the firmware, and the BIOS chip. And of course the cable, the USB cable that connects between the computer and the programmer. Okay, so let's get started. So to program a BIOS, we need 4 things. We need first the BIOS itself. Okay, the BIOS IC. So the BIOS IC, we should remove it from the motherboard. This is the BIOS IC. Let's assume that this BIOS is a failed chip. Okay, so we should remove it from the motherboard. Okay, and then install it in its support, and then install the support in the Apparel. So we need first the BIOS IC, and we need the programmer, okay, and the software. Okay, so the software is an application that can help us to transfer the firmware from the laptop, the computer, to the BIOS IC. Okay, so here the firmware is in the computer, and of course via the software we will transfer this firmware to the BIOS IC, and then we will go and install the BIOS IC in the motherboard, and the motherboard will work fine. So we need 4 things: the IC, the programmer, and the software and the firmware. Okay, so of course using this kind of programmer, as we have seen before, you should remove the BIOS IC. But using this kind of programmer, as you can see, this programmer that contain this clip, as you can see here, the clip contain here adaptation, as you can see, that you can install directly in the BIOS IC. Okay, so using this programmer, as you can see, you can flash it or program the IC without removing it from the motherboard. Okay, because of this clip, as you can see. Okay, so of course the programmer contain many accessories, as you can see here. So the first accessory, as you can see, is the software. So for example, for this kind of programmer, as we have seen before, the TL866, you will get with the programmer the software, as you can see in the CD-ROM. Okay, you will get the software here in the CD-ROM, or if you want, you can download it from the internet. And of course, you will get with the programmer many adapters, as you can see. You will get many adapters, not just 2 adapters, but many adapters. So you will get 8-pin adapters for 8-pin BIOS, 16-pin adapters, and even other adapters that you can use with other kind of BIOSes, like the old BIOSes. Okay, you will get also the USB cable, as you can see. This USB cable, use it to connect the programmer to the laptop. Okay, use it to connect the programmer to the laptop. And of course, you will get the extractor. So this is the extractor that you can use to extract and to install the BIOS in the adapters. Okay, so of course, after connecting between the programmer and the laptop, and then you put the BIOS chip in the EEPROM, you install it. Okay, then you can launch your program. You can go to the software and choose program, and then the program will pass. When you program the BIOS, this, as you can see here, in the EEPROM, there is 2 LED. This LED is for the power, and the second LED is for run. Once you launch the program process, this LED will be eliminated, the run LED, until you get here finish, or the BIOS programmed successfully. Okay, so now I will go right now and explain to you the software interface. Okay, so as you can see, this is the software interface. As you can see, we have the Mini Pro version 6.85. Okay, so we have here tabs. This is the file tab that you can use to open or save, copy or paste, etc. The firmwares, here we have selects. Over here, of course, you can select which IC, BIOS IC you will use. For example, here we have 8 pins or 16 pins, as you can see. So here we have project. You can open a project or save it. Here we have device. You can read or verify or program. So you can use this tab to program the BIOS, or even you can use this here, this button here. As you can see, here we have P means programmer. Here we have read. Okay, the same button as we have here. So read, verify. You can verify the BIOS, the firmware in the BIOS, program the BIOS, blank check, say a number of the BIOS, multi-program. You can just click here to program many BIOSes in the same time. Of course, you can use also this, as you can see, multi-program, this button here. Okay, so here we have tools. This is some tools like calculator, like system self check. Okay, help and language. So here, as you can see, we have other buttons here. As you can see, for example, this is blank check. Here we have auto 25 select. Here we have to verify. You can just click here and click verify in order to verify the BIOS chip. Okay, so here you have fill. As you see, fill buffer. You can fill the buffer. For example, you can pick an address, for example, and go, as you say, start address and end address value. You can fill the address with this value. For example, here we have addresses. okay, if you want to change some values in the firmware. Okay, so here, as you can see, you can read. So you can read, as you see, this is a very important button here. So before programming any BIOS, you should first read it and then make a backup. Okay, once you click read, as you can see here, I have device unavailable because I didn't connect any BIOS. Okay, so once you click read, the firmware will be uploaded here, and then you can make the backup. Okay, you can make the backup of this firmware and of course save the firmware. So here, as you see, program, so this is the button that you can use to program, as you can see, the IC. So once you click program, the IC will be programmed. Okay, and here, of course, if you want to program many ICs in the same time, as you see, device 1, device 2, 3 and 4. Okay, you can press program device 1, etc. Okay, here, by clicking here, you will get all informations about the IC that is installed. And of course here you can here select the IC that you want, for example. Okay, you can select the IC you want. For example, you can check the company you want. For example, let's check, for example, Intel. Let's write here Intel, for example. We have here Intel company, as you can see, and then look for the reference of your BIOS, as you can see, and then press select, as you see. Okay, or you can just go and detect your IC. Okay, so that's all about how to program the BIOS. So it's pretty easy. So to summarize, if you have a failed BIOS chip, and depending on the program you have, so if you have the program, for example, TL866, like this programmer, you should remove the IC from the motherboard and then connect it to its adapter and then program it by connecting the programmer to the laptop and by launching the software. Okay, and then you can program the IC. But if you have a program like this that have the clip, you can program your BIOS without removing it from the motherboard. You can just connect this clip to the BIOS in the motherboard and connect this EEPROM, as you can see, or this programmer to the USB of the laptop and launch the software, and then you can program the BIOS. So it's pretty easy. Okay, BIOS, or basic input-output system, is a program that is charged to start the computer system after it is powered on. It also manages the data flow between the computer's operating system and attached devices, such as the hard disk drive, the keyboard, the mouse, and printer. The BIOS software is a group of instructions. It performs a self-test called POST, or Power on Self-Test, that helps to verify the computer hardware. If the computer does not pass the POST, you will hear a combination of beeps that indicate what is malfunctioning in the computer.